Today I want to show the new configuration that we've been working on here at BMS of a small office engine, we call it. It's equipment that is required in a lot of small offices, and the purpose of the video was to show disassembly of the unit, actually assembly of the unit, how easy it is to assemble, but I'm going to show it in the reverse direction of disassembly because that will show as I disassemble it what some of the components are doing and how they're located, and assembly would simply be the reverse operation. So let me make a start. I'm going to remove the door of this unit. It's got a simple catch like that and can be removed. While we're here, just explaining what's in the box: an Eaton UPS, a Netgear ReadyNAS, a Netgear UTM, a Netgear switch, and a WireTech patch panel. And this unit here is simply a cable management module which tidies up all of the patch leads. Side covers come off just as easily. So that's giving us good access to the gear. I'll swing the unit around to show the end panel and the way the rear is configured. Now the next part of the process, I'm going to remove a lot of the cables from the rear. The UPS on the bottom has a series of IEC connections. That plug there is simply an IEC to an Australian style plug, and then there's 3 more IEC outputs there, which I've got cables going up to the other equipment. The Netgear ReadyNAS, the Netgear UTM, the Netgear switch. Now the yellow patch lead here is a connection from the front of the unit back to the ReadyNAS, and there's still a USB cable here connecting the UPS to the ReadyNAS for shutdown. It's the shutdown cable. The 2 units are compatible in a shutdown mode. So removing those cables, look, I've used 2 metre cables. Some of these are supplied with the UPS, and by simply coiling them up and tucking them underneath the unit, the larger cables fit. Maybe shorter cables would be tidier. So that's most of the rear units removed. This power adapter here runs 2 fans that I've got mounted in the top of the unit. So let's go back to the front. This cable management block here that I talked about covers the patch leads, and I've got them arbitrarily connected between the switch and the patch panel, and between the patch panel and the UTM, utilising all the available ports. The current switch in there has got 8 gigabit ports and 8 gigabit power over Ethernet ports. Quite a useful combination in a small office. This configuration may well be ideal for a 10-person small office and can provide most of the requirements that a small office needs. So I'm just going to start disconnecting some patch leads. There's the yellow one that went through to the ReadyNAS. There's also an uplink between the UTM and the switch there, and then there's 4 ports on the UTM. 2 of them were being used for user gigabit ports, 2 WAN ports there being unused, and an ADSL modem module in that unit. This is a Netgear UTM 9S. That's a phone line connected there to the UTM. Phone line's running through the mess here up to a port on the patch panel. So if a patch panel was let in, if a port on the patch panel can be used for a phone line, even though it's only a RJ11 style port. Now I'm just plucking all of these patch leads out. I've used 1/2 metre cables here. These are all part of the WireTech range that we now distribute, and I'm just zipping along there, removing those patch leads. As I said, they are rather entangled through this cable management thing. The cable management guide does cover up quite a mess of cabling when used like that, but it keeps the cables away from the door of the cabinet. And I'm now whipping across the switch there, removing the patch leads from the switch. So I think all of these will come out as a bundle virtually once I've released them from the switches. Still another 8 to go there. We'll get them. It's being a bit difficult. I know if you don't use a cable management module, it makes the configuration of these cables quite messy. Here we go. That's them removed en masse. And that yellow lead tucks through the cable management system to the rear, and this hadn't been unplugged. And I'll remove it. So we're now seeing more of the system. I think to start getting into it, I'd like to remove some of these units. This is a 6RU rack. So there's 6 modules here: the UPS, the ReadyNAS, the UTM, a switch, a cable management unit, and a patch panel. The patch panel being a Netgear 24-port patch panel, Cat 6. Now the patch panel in this configuration as displayed does not have 24 Cat 6 structured cables coming into it. You can see that cable management system is a plastic array with a cover that clips on the front, coming out quite close to the glass when the door's on, but not, but still giving some clearance. So let's move further down the rack. This is a Netgear JGS 5.1 PE, which is power over Ethernet switch, fairly low cost switch given its functionality. It is a relatively small unit with ears on it to make it fit and be supported in the rack. The next unit here is the UTM 9S, currently fitted with a ADSL modem in a slot configuration, so it keeps the firewall routing and web security all in one unit, and means there are no additional components required for your internet connection. Most applications nowadays, or a lot of new applications, requiring cloud connection. So that unit will slide forward again with ears to secure it in the rack. Now this readiness unit is a server as such. It performs file serving functions. It's a Linux based operating system. It really is a plug and play type server. You can configure user logins on it, and you can set it up for a range of functions, including things like recording video surveillance. There's an application that can run on the unit that will so that unit's relatively deep. It was using up most of the space in this rack. This rack is 450mm deep, so that's one rack unit. The hot swappable drive bays, and so we're getting stripped back here. The Eaton UPS we've used is a rather deep unit for this size case. I've mounted it forward as much as possible, right out to the edge of the cabinet, and because of that, where the other units were mounted back on the rack, I've secured this unit using ears attached to the back of the unit, which I will now remove. The unit is placed forward so that there was room at the rear for the power cables to run into the unit. This is a 650 VA rack mount unit. It's got a digital display on the front, providing real-time information about the loading and the backup and the runtime, all those things that are. It can be fitted with a network management card, and it's a relatively heavy unit. I'm going to slide that out the back because the ears on it won't allow me to slide it forward. So there you go, that's the Eaton UPS, 4 outputs, IEC, 1 IEC input, place for a network card, place for external switching, but I don't think there's any real need for that. USB port for backup cable, serial port as well if required, and a small fan. Now with this cabinet stripped back to that stage, with just the patch panel remaining, this patch panel does not have 24 Cat6 cables coming into the back of it. I will show you what would be involved in the assembly if this patch panel was all terminated with cables. Because bearing in mind it needs to be removed to the rear, because the cables, the structured cabling coming to it, would be fixed through the rear of the cabinet into the building typically. So I've removed that. Now that can come forward a little bit. Imagine it had a bundle of 24 blue cables attached to it. You'd bring it out a bit. You'd probably have in the order of 1 metre of cable coming off the back of this from the wall, and you probably could bring this unit out this far from the cabinet. But ultimately it needs to pass back through the cabinet to release. And so at that point you'd be removing the cabinet from the wall and sliding the cabinet away. But that's the patch panel removed. Now, what's left here is a shell of a case fitted with 2 fans. I think if we bring the camera around, we may be able to see those fans, and the little plug pack adapter at the rear that powers those. Remember, at the beginning I removed an Australian to IEC cord that connected those. Those would be typically fitted when the cabinet's constructed, and provides excellent cooling. That's blowing air out the top of the case, obviously sucking air in through all of the ventilation in the rest of the case to cool the units. So I think that's getting close to the end of my demonstration. It's as you can see, quite a small package. This one is 450 deep, 6 RU, 600 long, and some would say the components I had in there were shoehorned in, but it just goes to show a unit this size can pack a fair amount of punch in a small office. There is the alternate, which would provide more space and in a lot of situations be more practical to have this unit on a hinged rear cabinet. This is the unhinged version. We also sell a hinged version which has hinges down one side, and it's 100mm extra depth. You mount the 100mm section to the wall. You can run your extrusion cabling into that 100mm section, and your power points and things can be mounted through the aperture in the rear of the cabinet on the wall, and the equipment, as I had mounted in here, can be mounted. It's only the front section is only the same depth, but the UPS can mount further back so it's flush with the other units, and the extra 100mm on the rear provides room for the IEC connections to be used without fouling a rear cover, or in this case, if this unit was used, a wall is likely to be flush with here. So that's our small office engine assembly details shown in reverse as a disassembly. So hopefully that's helpful for you. I'll finish there.